the #1 YouTube channel in the world. So they take all their resources and they come up with dozens or hundreds of hooks or thumbnails. So before they even create a whole video or a whole idea, they just think of a thumbnail and a hook that is just so bonkers that they feel like they can't go to sleep at night until they know what happens in that video or in that story. And then they go and create the video.
All right, guys, I'm here with my good friend from afar, Connor, who I've got the pleasure of meeting a couple years ago on an app that I don't know if still exists, but no one really uses on Clubhouse.
It does. I checked it out. I checked it out recently.
Connor, you've grown quite a bit, and what you do is a little bit different from when I first had met you. You did some amazing things at your prior company, but I'll let you share a little bit about your journey, because most of the people that are going to be listening to this are agents, whether they're team leaders or brand new agents. They're looking for people that could point them in the right direction. And I think you are a very, very qualified person from what you used to do. And we'll highlight a little bit about that, but also I'm excited for you to chat about what you've been working on recently. So who's Connor? Share with us.
Yeah, cool, man. Cool, man. Appreciate you having me. I always enjoy the conversations, especially back to the Clubhouse days. We had some fun ones, but so I'm originally from San Diego, and a little over a decade ago, I started working at Zillow Group, so a very early employee there. And I was fortunate to meet and learn from and work with a lot of these badass agents, very similar to yourself, teams all over the country that are selling thousands of homes or billion in production. And I was always kind of obsessed with learning the strategies, the marketing, et cetera, and being a student. I still consider myself, a white belt, a student today. And fast forward to, I started making videos on my own, and some real estate friends started reaching out for help. And now I've got my own business, Video Launch.
Amazing. Maybe we can start with your before you started Video Launch. You advised a lot of teams, you work with a lot of teams. Like, what are some takeaways you can share with us from that experience? Did we lag out a bit right there?
I think it froze up for a second.
Okay, cool.
Or I'm back?
I think we're back though.
I can, it's clear now though. Last I heard part was advising a lot of teams.
Yeah, so Connor, maybe you can highlight a little bit about what you used to do. And you were an advisor for many teams, and maybe share a little bit about what made a team successful working with you and your company, your prior company, and what didn't work.
Yeah. At Zillow, right? I mean, these were teams that were, they're selling a lot of homes as it is, but a lot of the focus was around online sort of internet business and lead conversion. And, that turns into a lot of other things like recruiting and scaling and all of that. So I think there's a ton we could get into, but at the end of the day, it was figuring out how teams, and this is funny to even describe it this way in 2023. So maybe I'll back up 1 second to say, like, in 2009, when I first started getting into the real estate space, I lived in San Francisco. I was literally using a fax machine to communicate with real estate brokers about contracts. Like, dude, look at me. I look young AF, but I was like, it wasn't weird. It wasn't a joke. Like, we were using a fax machine to do business. And so to me, like, a lot of my experience was that transition from, landlines and emails and text messages, and basically this device of how are real estate pros, growing and generating business all through this, internet change.
And you clearly did really good work because you stayed there for a long, long time. Now, maybe we can highlight a little bit about what you're working now, because you just mentioned it. What do you do now?
Yeah, so I help real estate pros with videos. I mean, I think it's still along this vein of evolving and winning on this device and all the changes that are happening in essentially every industry out there. But my belief, and the context I'll give is, there's kind of this approach, or multiple approaches, right, for business or growing business. But with Zillow, I'm just going to get real specific on this, like, and not try to avoid vague terms here. So with Zillow, there are some positive and some negative trade-offs. I think real estate teams, and I'm speaking even more broadly, portals too, or lead generation, buying leads. So when you're doing that, there's a lot of positives in terms of you can control the variables, you can control how much volume you get, how quickly you get it in certain areas. So you can get flow, you can get business, in a pretty controlled and immediate way. And one downside is this chart I've seen is the diminishing returns, right? So if you were going to buy 100 leads or 5,000 or 50,000 leads from whatever website, there are diminishing returns for you as a business because your costs go up, the complexity for your operational drag, goes up, and the margins, I've seen it. It gets just very difficult for a top team to successfully scale that. But I started seeing on the other side of the coin, and again, trying to always learn from what are these top teams, what are these agents, doing. And it was this idea of like brand and video and building out sphere of influence. I mean, we'd always heard that for years, right? SOI and, things like that. So it wasn't too new, but it was sort of this digital version and building brand. And, all these top agents were talking about, now it's like the perfect prospect. It was the opposite of chasing leads. It was the opposite of outbound calling someone who doesn't know me and isn't trusting me. It was them inbounding to me, them deciding they wanted to work with me, and high levels of trust, high conversion, higher margin because I'm not paying for that, customer acquisition. So I just gradually kind of, got very excited about this opportunity for real estate, professionals to grow their business from brand. And so I started playing with that myself, making cringy videos of myself and with some friends. And that has just continued to brick by brick by brick, evolved into what it is today.
I appreciate you sharing what you just shared. That I think in the beginning, we all judge ourselves creating these videos. They all feel cringe, but we get better, right? And clearly you've gotten good enough where you're starting a business to help other people. In terms of what you're helping agents and teams with, like, how would you describe what you do? What is your expertise, and what's the end result that agents should expect?
Yeah. So one huge challenge I kept hearing from people that sort of saw the light or saw the opportunity of brand was just the execution, right? Like, I think a lot of, especially in the real estate space, people love, the high end coaches and the gurus. And I'm not trying to knock, and I will not use any sort of names in that way, but there's strategy and information, and there's a million books behind me, so I'm about it. But but there's just like the implementation, like a lot of them just struggle with actually doing. And there's a list of reasons, like, can't creatively come up with, content, can't effectively write that copy so that the message comes off clear, but also quickly, can't just find the time to be accountable. So there's a number of these things around execution, but that's where my company comes in a lot, is the strategy, of course, figuring out, what are we going to do from like a overarching creative production strategy, but also the implementation. What do we need to do with who and when, and then actually get those videos created so that way a realtor can walk away with videos loaded that actually grows their business.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that. And it should be assumed from what we've already discussed, but maybe you can highlight the basics. What's the importance of video nowadays? I mean, we're clearly talking through, this audio and video, but
yeah,
we could have just chose to just talk and use the audio version. But I think there's something to say about the visual too.
Yeah, I'll acknowledge that I'm probably the most biased person to answer that, right? So like, I'm going to try and keep this very objective and clear, but like, I recently, I have two thoughts that come to this, but like, there's this term parasocial relationships. I recently done this post about it. Have you ever heard of that term before? Or
please share
this idea that like we have, especially our generation, maybe if you think of a celebrity when you were younger, that you watched on TV and you followed them. And because of the amount, and so for me, someone like a Kobe Bryant, you know, I fell in love with his journey and his grit and his championships and his story. And he literally never knew who Connor was. It was a one-way relationship, but like I would have been willing to like buy his jersey or buy a home with him or whatever. So like I think we're all now in this sort of like change where we all have parasocial relationships happening. We have one-way relationships happening on social that we're not even yet aware of. But the only way that you can really make that, you know, effective to get meaningful depth out of these relationships is through video. I mean, I don't say it's the only way. Like obviously you can do that in written form and art and audio and so on. But like, to me, I think the deepest, the rawest, the realest is video. That's where you can see my face, you can hear my voice, you can get a sense for my vibe. And that's when actually people feel like connecting or working together or feel like they have a parasocial relationship. And so that is thought number one of that's happening at scale for everybody. Even if you only have 4 or 4 million, that's starting to happen. And that I think is a key to people growing businesses in the future. And then, I mean, a second part is not even just in like a social way like that, but I believe video will be used in every layer in replacing the fax machine example story that I brought up. So like one-to-one communication with your past clients and database, one-to-one communication with your team members, your staff, your agents, or maybe into your Slack channel for Monday, you know, download or Monday kind of motivation or something. Like a lot of those things that used to be written text or something, I believe are all moving more and more to be in video. Training, modules, all that kind of stuff we're seeing, you know, happening, you know, on video.
Thank you for those 2 big bullet points. And I just looked up parasocial, so I'll continue to look into the definition of it and what it really means.
Nerdy, but yeah.
Hey, I think it's very valid because I think anyone that's listening to this, and including you and me, we go to YouTube or we listen to our podcasts on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and we really relate to certain people that we resonate with, that's sharing information with us. And it's almost like we know these people. So I totally get that.
Do you follow, I'll add maybe just the third one thing out loud, but do you follow Alex Hormozi? Are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
I'm sure
I've seen him go from like, who is this guy to he's everywhere now.
Yeah, everywhere. But I like the way he described video, you know, he wasn't describing video necessarily as much as like personal brand as a compounding vehicle in your business and in your life. So like, I know like in real estate, a lot of people can relate to the like, you know, ninth wonder of the world, compound interest or compounding equity in their home or whatever, you know, these phrases are and stuff. Like there's just insane amounts of value in that. But when you do things like whether it's buying leads or even like arguably knocking on doors, and a lot of these things work, you can sell homes. So I just think they all have different trade-offs. But when you look at your business, you know, what has the highest compounding, you know, equity in it, I think it's going to be something like your personal brand. And so that's why, again, to me, I'm just obsessed with video.
It resonates a lot with how I think about it too. And you reference Alex Hormozi. I'm going to reference Naval. Naval has always put this equation in front of me, which is input equals output. But how can you make your inputs equal a multiple of outputs, which is the compounding factor? And I totally agree, man. Video, especially if it's evergreen or especially if it's like storytelling, like there's a lot that could be done that could be watched, not just one time, like a phone call or a knock on a door, which is kind of what you're suggesting.
Have you seen Naval? Cause like I'm really into him too, but his definitions of leverage and his discussion around the different definitions of leverage and how people can kind of utilize those in their business.
The story I think, from the contractor hourly all the way to a company like Zillow or Redfin that he references, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think even some of that can feel like almost overwhelming too. Like someone like me, I don't code. I don't have like a tech background. So like, I don't have a ton of capital, that I can invest and stuff. Like, so I don't have 14 people on staff that I can leverage. So there's 3 out of his 4 definitions of leverage that I really, as a business owner, can't hammer. But his 4th definition or 4th example of leverage is actually media. And so, media again is where that's something you can create one video and then it can be seen 1,000 times or even 1,000,000 times. And so those operate just like a salesperson or a sales call or a marketing, whatever. And so media is a form of leverage that everyone can really implement in their business, even if they don't have all the resources.
Right. It's very powerful because, yeah, you're right. I mean, some of us, we didn't grow up coding. We haven't learned that. But media definitely can compound, in your words, your reach for other people to be able to find you, especially if your subject matter that you're talking about, you're an expert. I kind of wanted to go back to your experiences, if we can, because you worked and you were very qualified at what you did, and you got a paycheck, and you probably earned quite a bit. But you left a secure role that you got a guaranteed paycheck to start your own company. And I think that journey in itself, you're an entrepreneur by heart by doing that. Maybe you can walk us through that decision making. And also, you're talking to a lot of entrepreneurs on this podcast, real estate agents. Like, what's your word of advice for people in a similar position?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's an exact right formula or path for everyone here, because I kept getting advice from people, whether it be things like you got to jump and go all in, or you got to do it this way or that way. And so I think, not even necessarily the phrase of self-awareness, but like not putting this insane pressure on like, doing things some right way or for someone else, but doing it your way. And for me, I did like security, man. Like sometimes I do some things that are pretty risky or seem risky, but like, I like comfort. Like, I mean, this being at Zillow, and being there early, like I not only had a multiple 6-figure salary, I had stock equity that was, had compounded over years and was still getting, issued every quarter. And so and I had medical insurance for family of 6 that I provide for. Like, there are a lot of these things that felt, very real. And so I did, though, kept coming back to, where do I feel like my vision of the future of my happiness and what fulfills me and what's something I want to be excited and proud about every single day. And this is what I kept coming back to in terms of owning my own business. And as much as I think there'd be some cool story of like, ripping the Band-Aid and jumping and like having all this risk and going all in and like, almost going bankrupt. Like, I kind of like did it to me what I felt like very practical and conservative. So over the course of years, I built momentum in relationship equity and my skills, in customer use cases, and, proving out my sort of own product fit and model, building up cash flow and revenue to where I could then make that transition, in a way that felt very win-win for me and felt like, it could be the right time for me, not something that was stressful. So hopefully that was a short story long that helps someone, in that scenario.
No, I think you shared a lot that is really, really important. Your best timing. You trusted your gut. You trusted your gut. And you made a practical decision. It wasn't just on a whim that you just said, hey, I'm going to do this. But you very likely had a business plan, and clearly you're executing it right now, and you've seen some success.
Yeah. I like to think sort of like try to at least chess moves into the future, for any goals that I have.
I love that. Very calculated, because that one move influences 5, 10, 15 moves in the future. So makes sense. Connor, if you could share a little bit about, let's say I'm either a new agent or even an experienced agent that has been very traditional in business. I haven't adopted video. I'm thinking about it. what's your word of advice to me? Like, how can I get off the right foot and make sure I'm making strides to implementing something like video?
Cool. So I'll maybe in no particular order spout out like a handful of maybe some rapid fire like tips or thoughts that come to mind. But I think one first thing is sort of a who, not how. A lot of people get obsessed with the app or the captions or the software or the microphone and the technology, when really they just need to figure out, is it a Wilson? Is it a partner? Is it a videographer locally? Like, who do I need that can actually unlock, a little bit of momentum here? Another thing is, I think it is okay, especially nowadays, since it is so noisy with so much video and just so many, real estate pros that are actually trying to take a leap and throw a lot of sort of like kind of junk at the wall. I think it's okay to slow down and take a moment to focus on quality over quantity. I'll go a little deeper on this real quick. So a few years ago, or maybe 5-10 years ago, it might've been a huge advantage or early adopter sort of, benefit to just do a million videos, just show up, even if it's really kind of, less useful or productive as what you're trying to do. But nowadays there's so much content that we're actually competing with, because you're not just competing with other real estate professionals and videos. You have to think about the million videos that cross your homeowner, typical homeowner's, home screen in a given 24 hours. And so how are you going to break through that noise has gotten insanely harder. The reward is insanely bigger, but proportionately more difficult. And so the quick example on this last point, and I'll go on to some more ideas for these agents, but Mr. Beast in a podcast recently said that they take, and I know we all don't have the resources, but like, are you familiar with Mr. Beast? Like, so they take a team of, dozens of sort of creatives that are, and this is, so anyone that's not listening, it's the #1 YouTube channel in the world, like literally the most subscribers, the best, you could say the best video creator in the world. So they take all their resources and they come up with dozens or hundreds of hooks or thumbnails. So before they even create a whole video or a whole idea, they just think of a thumbnail and a hook that is just so bonkers that they feel like they can't go to sleep at night until they know it happens in that video or in that story. And then they go and create the video. So what I'm getting at is, it's so important to actually be intentional about a quality. By quality, I don't mean some sick lighting setup and fancy thing. I mean, like you can break through the noise with your message, that you're not boring. So I think that matters a ton. And so I think if we can all be, that's the advice, right? So it's okay to be intentional about your hook, so that way you can actually get your message heard, and these platforms will reward you more and more and more now if you actually get your video out there. So I probably have like multiple other tips, but I don't know if there's anything. I'll pause because I'll just ramble for a little bit. Is there anything on that you want to check in?
It's really good. I think referencing Mr. Beast is great, because I followed his Joe Rogan podcast. I followed some of the other places that he's spoken at, because he is the best example that we have that has grown such a good following. And he is doing much more than YouTube videos now, although that was and is still his core. He's starting different businesses. I mean, his brand is just huge. And maybe it speaks to your point of the end goal of a real estate agent and or team leader is not just creating videos. It's more so the brand that you're talking about. I don't know if you wanted to highlight a little bit about why brand is important, because videos are videos, and good videos are, portrayed a message that you want to get out there. But what about brand?
Yeah, that's the actual game at the end of the day. So I'm going to keep stealing quotes from other people, so making sure to reference them. But Hormozi talked about, because this exact answer in question. So, when you look at videos, especially on TikTok and Instagram Reels and all that stuff, it's very fleeting, and for better or worse. Like, you put all this energy into creating this video, and then after like 48 hours, 2-3 days, like just vanishes into the ether. It's gone forever. And like essentially no one ever sees it again. And so there are ways to squeeze more juice out of the, those efforts. But like the point that to your question is, I used to think that the equity was in these videos, that I had these library of these videos, and like, if I had 1,000 videos, then that could equate to being a millionaire. And like, obviously that just doesn't make sense. What actually equates to real revenue or opportunities or customers, and at least in my instance, has been the people, the relationship equity from those parasocial relationships or those direct relationships who are watching the videos. So it adds up basically. Even if they only watch 10 seconds today and then they watch 20 seconds tomorrow, over the course of 2-3 years, and this is what, again, has happened to me. I'll gladly throw out another story, an example of, a CEO who had reached out to me on LinkedIn this last year and said, I've been watching your videos for over a year, and I'd love for you to join, on the board of our company. And so this is a, very well-established tech company that we can kind of share in the notes and stuff. But like, these opportunities to me come from the relationship equity, not from necessarily the direct videos. So maybe even jumping off videos for a second, I think everyone can look at local events. I think everyone can look at, hitting these other channels, or even if it's taking your videos and putting it in your email newsletter. So it's not just becoming a video rock star as much as what you had just asked, Wilson, as how are you building the relationship equity, not just finding your next sale, which I have a ton of empathy for. It's not easy. Again, I got to pay bills, especially now. I don't even have a salary anymore, and I got 4 kids to feed. So I get it.
Thank you for sharing that. I think everyone's at a different place. And yes, as we say in our industry, some people just get really commission breath and focus on the deal. But anyone that has been in it long, and you've witnessed this very well, Connor, the people that you've worked with in the past and now, is it's all about helping people in the long run. It's not just that one deal today that we paid for a lead, or for example. So
yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah.
How can people find you? And I guess what's the best question someone could ask you for help?
Cool. So it's, pretty much any channel that they might be able to reach out on across social, but I'm mostly hanging out on Instagram these days. You can go to videolaunch.co. I've got a free download there where it's 21 hooks and ideas for real estate pros if they want to try and create some videos and kind of run with that on their own. And then to me, like one of the best questions, or one of the best things that people should be looking at, is how can I get my viewer glued to the screen for the entirety of my video? So whatever video you're making, whether it's about your business, a story about you camping, or whatever it is that you're making on social, all of these platforms, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, etc., what they want is more revenue, right? At the end of the day, they want more dollars. That comes from them serving more ads. And the only way they can do that is by getting more eyeballs on the screen for longer periods of time. So we've been seeing this huge shift in, all these algorithms and platforms where if you can get people to stay on the screen, that's actually the key to, even if you only have 500 followers, you can have over 100,000 views today in 2023 if you can find answers to that question. How do I get my viewers to watch the entirety of my video and not just flick right past me? It's a simple question, very, very hard, to creatively answer on an ongoing basis.
Thank you for simplifying that, because it's true. All these platforms want people to stay. So if your content's not interesting enough, or not answering a question, or not solving a problem for them, then they're not going to stay. And, these companies can't sell ads. And that's really the motivation of some of these companies, is to make sure that they can monetize off some of, the organic content that we as creators create, right?
Dude, and I was just at a multi-billion corporate tech company. It's what all of these companies want. They all want more money. And that's why it's this shift from no longer about, hashtags and your friends and family and this and that. If your video does well, they'll show it to thousands or even millions of people, because they'll get to serve more ads and make more money. So that's fine. and to me, it's easier to understand than it is to fight it. So try to answer that question. How do we get our viewers to watch the entirety of my video? Don't be boring. Don't be slow. Have fun and play the infinite game.
I was going to ask you, what did we miss? But that's really good. Even that simplified, like what you should do in front of a camera. Anything we miss?
No, man, I think just hitting on that like very last phrase I said at the end, it's one of my favorite books behind me. I think I look at this in anything that I try to do in my life, whether that's, you know, in personal or professional, but play the infinite game. You know, something like videos is not this short-term fad. You know, we're all like, I think everyone here that's listening to this is probably planning on being here for the next 10, 20, 50 years. So I think play in that direction versus, you know, just thinking, you know, short-term.
Love that. Connor, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. I look forward to seeing your company grow, you grow, and your work, because how many people or teams are you helping right now?
So we've got about 10 clients up and down the West Coast, and these are really like, you know, it's a very high touch, very, you know, in-depth creative process. So some of these teams are really big, and you know, it's been a blast so far. So looking forward to, you know, 2023.
For sure, in the future. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, man.